Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 691 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is extremely late on Thursday, but you still know what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week across NXT and AEW. Both brands are building to, let's call them mid-major shows. In the month of February, you have a premium live event for NXT, Vengeance Day, going down in Washington, D.C. Of course, AEW flying halfway around the world for Grand Slam Australia in the middle of February as well. So both programs are quickly building the cards for those events. NXT a little bit slower, actually, than AEW, but it has left us plenty to discuss on today's show. Before we get into any of that, allow me to hit you with some of this. First, that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Not only will you be able to listen to every single episode on YouTube if you so choose, but you will also get video clips from old interviews that we are currently posting to that channel. We're also posting additional video content, and we do hope to build it up to such a level where we can start monetizing and then creating video shows for you, and of course, airing full interviews with video on that channel. So again, subscribe at Getting Overcast. We would greatly appreciate it. Personally, it has been quite a week for the Silver King, and if I'm being candid, I am a bit exhausted. Just spent a few days in Orlando, Florida, about 90 miles away from snow falling in Florida for the first time in, I guess, decades, at least to the level that it did. I did not get the opportunity to experience that. What I did get to experience was ice cold temperatures and the worst cold rain that I've ever experienced in my life. It was just the nastiest weather for a few days in what's otherwise a pretty decent spot, Orlando, even if you're not going to theme parks and you're just working at a golf convention, which is pretty much what I was doing for a few days, but drove back and forth to South Florida. As you heard with our Tuesday WWE show, not the best audio quality. Wish we could have delivered what we normally do, and certainly the equipment we are using for today's show. But nevertheless, got that in, and we're going to get this one in as well. Just a little while ago, got to finish up AEW Dynamite, watched that shortly after Collision, was able to watch NXT on Tuesday night, so we are all in and ready to go with this episode. Allow me to remind you, by the way, that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast is available on social media. You can follow us at Getting Overcast on Twitter and at Getting Over on Blue Sky. For both accounts, you get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show, and we will do our best to read them on air. Because of travel this week, it was immensely difficult, but we have an absolutely loaded lineup for you next week. It actually all starts this Saturday. We will have a WWE Saturday Night's Main Event instant analysis show as soon as that special on NBC goes off the air. Tuesday will be our 2025 WWE Royal Rumble Ultimate Preview, and we will absolutely clear out questions and comments that you guys have regarding WWE. Next Thursday, we will do another NXT and AEW show. That is when we will finally get the opportunity to discuss those two shows in New Japan. Also, some of this NXT stuff that's been happening both at TNA Genesis and literally as we tape the show right now, a live episode of TNA airing from Full Sail University in Orlando, a stone's throw from the WWE Performance Center, the old home of NXT. So we're going to kind of wrap all of that up next week in this spot while also talking NXT and AEW. We're going to clear the deck. Super Bowl week is after that. The Silver King will be in New Orleans. We'll be doing a couple shows on location from there. We're hoping to do even additional bonus content from Nolans. We will find out if that happens. You will certainly be the first to know. let's not waste any further time off the top as we get into this program. We're going to talk all things NXT and AEW. We're going to kick it off with NXT. We'll do AEW next. And at the very end, we will do a multi-week ratings discussion for both shows. There are always timestamps in the episode description. So if you want to skip between NXT and AEW, that is your prerogative. As always, though, I do hope you listen to the entire program. Kicking off with NXT, the show itself opened with a shot of the commentary table, a 3-man booth with Corey Graves saying he was where he wanted to be. He also said, quote, "Let's light the fuse," which, was like the introductory words on the old Dynamite theme. Maybe a coincidence, maybe not. Fact of the matter is that Graves is now part of a 3-man commentary booth on the third brand while waiting for, I guess, football season to come back. That way he can spell Pat McAfee alongside Michael Cole again. As we said last week, Graves had every reason in the world to be annoyed at his position in the company, especially because Cole literally called him the heir apparent to his throne just a few months ago. At the same time, he should not have tweeted what he did publicly. My hope is that he has some type of expanded role, premium live events, other special shows, whatever the case. We're going to have to wait and see what actually happens. But Graves is better than just being the third man on NXT, though there's nothing wrong with that. You all know I'm a huge fan of the NXT product, and Graves is great, and he actually was really solid throughout this entire episode alongside Vic Joseph and Booker T, way better than he was 2 weeks ago, the first time he actually did it before getting last week off, or I guess getting sent home because of what he did on social media. So Graves worked with Booker really well, and alongside Vic, I believe they're actual legitimate friends. So there really was no issue with it. It's just, given what else he's done in this company, that's quite a demotion, one would say, going to NXT and being the third man, as opposed to being the number 2 person either on SmackDown or Raw. That's enough talk about commentary. Let's get into what happened on NXT itself. Bayley got a welcome home chant wearing some Io Sky inspired black leather pants.
Gonna look good, but she's got me saying, "Hey now!"
She said she visited NXT last week out of respect for how Roxanne Perez has helped the NXT women's division, only to get slapped in the face for it. She said being categorized alongside Natalya is a credit, not a criticism. 5 fans interrupted with a scheduled "I love you, Bayley" scream. She acknowledged them and then did kind of like the Roman Reigns ones gesture almost. Didn't even miss a beat in her promo, though. That was so super impressive. Bayley said the way Perez has acted on SmackDown and Raw doesn't prove that she belongs there. It proved she may not even be the right leader for NXT. Julia came out with another tweaked entrance saying she wanted to be in NXT after leaving Japan. And while Roxy may not look up to Bayley, she hopes to live up to Bayley's legacy. Perez and Cora Jade also in Io's pants.
That's the most action I've had all year.
Interrupted them. They entered the ring in perfect sync, which might have been a coincidence if it wasn't totally perfect. There's a great GIF of it that you can find on social media. The crowd booed so loud that it was real tough to hear them. Cora said role models don't come to NXT when it's convenient like Bayley, and they don't need to compete overseas to succeed in NXT like Julia. Roxy put over Bayley's accomplishments, but said her time's passed. Then she tried to wedge drive, saying Bayley wanted Julia's title so she could top the best women's division in wrestling, which has already exceeded the 4 horsewomen era of late. Quick brawl, the babyfaces stood tall, or so we thought. After the next segment, we saw them continuing to brawl. That actually further continued through a picture-in-picture commercial break. Legend has it they're still brawling right now. This was a paradigm of the type of, character building segment that Roxy needs, and precisely why she still has to spend more time in NXT. To be clear, I'm not talking about her on-screen character, rather the qualities that define a person and a professional in this business. She and Cora actually succeeded in powering through a hostile crowd. Decent job. They got thrown a little bit, but for neophytes, they actually exceeded my expectations once the fans get going. It's moments like this, though, that hammer home my point of Perez not needing to be rushed to the main roster. If this happened on Raw with 14,000 fans, let's say, you're getting a completely different result from this segment. It ultimately was solid. It clearly set up a star-studded tag team match between these four. Could have been a little bit more cohesive overall, but Julia is still learning the language. The fans hijacked the heels' time, so it was really tough to ask for more from this. I would like to see a singular woman beside Perez step up for Julia's title. She's been champion for weeks now, and it really just feels like she's waiting for a rematch and nothing else is coming down the pike. We want to know who are the next one or two in line, whether they're named number one contenders, whether they're winning some matches to boost their stock so they can get into that position. That's what we want to know, and right now we don't know that. Jada Parker backstage was crowing about Bayley mentioning her name as a top woman in NXT. Kalani Jordan overheard and said her name was mentioned as well. Parker shot back, quote, "Kalani, this whole attitude you're trying, ain't it, baby? So go back to your little drawing board."
Thank you.
Obviously, it sounds cooler when Jada says it than when I do. I also love how Jada calls people baby. Just the way she pronounces it hits me for some reason. Lonnie had her hair different with some darker eye makeup and like a more revealing shirt, almost as if she's like a teenager that's trying to prove that she's an adult or something like that. She's trying to rebel against her parents. At least that's how it came across to me. I promise you that I like Lonnie, just calling it like I see it. Carmen Petrovic stepped in all happy, so Jada shot at her, saying she finally got a kiss from a guy who will probably drop her in a few months. Zarya and Solruka removed Lonnie from the situation as everything got heated. And there's few things I love more in wrestling these days than Jada being given time to talk her talk. She absolutely bodied Lonnie and Carmen all inside of like 60 seconds. I've said before that she has a chance to be a Triple H style heel on the main roster. And week after week, Miss Parker proves exactly that. As far as I'm concerned, she has the highest ceiling of any woman's developmental talent. Personality plus, she's just the realist. And you know what? That's what her gimmick should be. The realist, Jada Parker. Someone listen to me. Let's get that going. Regarding Zarya, I've seen some frustration online that she's not regularly wrestling. While that is true, she's been featured backstage most weeks and is clearly part of their plans. Not everyone can be booked at the same time. There's only 2 hours of NXT, and yet she's not being forgotten about. Like, let's say, Zelina Vega or Blair Davenport over on the main roster. Her time will come. She's still at least getting regular screen presence. She's getting to work on her promos. Developmental is not only about being in the ring, wrestling 6, 7, 8, 12-minute matches on a weekly basis. The far bigger issue when it comes to Zarya is her presentation. I realize that all big, strong women don't need to be mean ass kickers. But the way she debuted and the way she dresses and looks does not exactly jive with her like friendly, advice-giving face who's happily teaming and hanging out with the possible stoner surfer girl. You know what I mean? That said, if you project NXT's backstage into a high school setting, which is something that we've done before, then maybe it does make sense, because in high school, you're friends with everyone, or you at least can be friends with all different types of people. And the way someone kind of dresses, the goth girl perhaps might be friends with the head cheerleader and no one thinks twice about it. So maybe that's what they're going for with this, but it's just a little bit out of the norm, I guess, for professional wrestling. So we had Petrovic against Parker coming out of this. Ashanti the Adonis obviously accompanied Carmen to the ring. Jada got a new theme that sounded like it might kind of be something, but the volume of the track and the vocal on the rap was so low, it just frankly sounded like shit. I know she was sharing an entrance with OTM out the mud, but it was way more impactful than this. Parker needs a banger with heavy bass, not a slow, empty sounding rap. Def Rebel really sucks, man. I digress. Jada hit an electric chair and the teardrop, leading Graves to say Carmella is her biggest fan. Parker hit a fisherman swinging neckbreaker and a back elbow. She was about to deliver a hypnotic when Lonnie distracted. That allowed Petrovic to roll her up for the upset win. Sensible for the storyline, kind of ridiculous in reality. Carmen can barely hold a candle to Jada in the ring, and even the roll-up itself was not overly believable. She's got the look, but she badly needs to work on the in-ring still. Jada and Lonnie, it is interesting as a non-title women's feud. We'll see if Jordan comes out of it any better as a character. This was mostly a forgettable match. Bianca Belair and Naomi appeared in a presumably taped promo saying they see the Metagirls and they can't match up to the women's tag team champions. Short and sweet, perfectly fine. The Meta Girls were excited in the locker room when Zarya and Soul came up, actually supporting them because it would mean bringing the titles back to NXT. Lash Legend was focused on winning the title in her hometown of Atlanta, and Jakara Jackson basically said she was just ready to bring the action. Then Tatum Paxley and Gigi Dolan got interested, suggesting they're now solidified as a team. We also saw Fatal Influence watching this go down, a couple other straggler women as well. There's a lot of women's teams in NXT. I love the way they are building this division. Wesley's crew, I guess, confronted Dion Lennox backstage, laughing that Lennox believes he's championship material. It got heated between them as Trick Williams walked by. Wes was feeling himself and started loudly talking shit behind his back, saying he went from penthouse to the outhouse. So Trick straight up smacked the shit out of him. Like, what did Five Fingers say to the face type of slap?
What did the Five Fingers say to the face?
What?
Slap!
And no one did anything about it. Almost as good as Jada smacking the hell out of Roxanne. Not quite at that level just yet. Wes did sell it like death, though. It took him a good 10 seconds just to get back on his feet. It was hysterical. I saw Redman, yes, like the rapper Redman, see this clip online. He retweeted it, made a joke about it, so thought that was pretty funny. Lee beat Lennox later in the show. When he came out, he had a makeup-enhanced handprint bruise on his face, which was obviously great. Dion did get some power moves in the early going, but Wes hit cardiac kick, got the win. I mean, it had to have been in 2 minutes. And then Wes commented so much for being championship material, kind of burying Dion unnecessarily. I'm not really sure why Lennox has been booked this way, but we'll find out maybe a little bit later as we break down the show. Wes also called out Trick for a match next week, leading Williams down to quickly clear him out and accept the challenge. The NXT Championship was on the line. Oba Femi defending against Eddie Thorpe. During a pre-match training shop, we saw that Oba had a locker just like everyone else in NXT. This dude is the literal champion. Why is he stuck in a little box in the corner next to Shawn Spears? There should be a champion's room or something in kayfabe. He should have one and Julia should have one. It doesn't make any sense that the champion would just be working next to, or I should say training and dressing next to everyone else in the company. Femi walked past Williams backstage on his way out to the ring. There was a quick stare down. Diamond Dallas Page was in the crowd for this. I presume he did a seminar or something at the WWE Performance Center. It's just a guess. This obviously main evented the show. Most of Thorpe's offense came on counters. He had a tomahawk elbow drop and a snap German suplex, but Femi caught a regular tomahawk elbow and turned it into a choke slam. Oba then came back, hit his toss slam and fall from grace to retain the title somewhat decisively. This was a better match than I expected. Thorpe got more offense than I expected. Femi sold a lot for him, and Thorpe kind of looked more legitimate here than he has in a long time. Trick confronted Oba in the ring after the bell. Eddie tried to rush him, but Williams just jumped him with a trick shot and then went right back to talking trash, sit your ass down type of moment. Fun little deal to end the show. It remains a bottom 5 finisher in professional wrestling. Ethan Page addressed the NXT Universe, which I thought was an in-ring segment, but it wound up being a pre-taped, Progressive-sponsored promo. He expressed how he loved hearing the sounds of pain and bones breaking, like with Cedric Alexander and Javon Evans. Page chastised Evans for fighting back too soon, saying it was his last warning, and next time, he won't stop. Evans then spoke through the wire to Ava, saying he wanted to fight him. She said he's not cleared. Cedric Alexander came in, said he would take care of business. Finally, Ava didn't get pushed over just because someone asked her something. A-Town Down Under then stormed into her office, saying Ava's far better than Nick Aldis as a general manager. Austin Theory even said she's better than The Rock. We learned Grayson Waller Effect will have the champion live in Theory's hometown of Atlanta next week. You know what? I thought they were saying the tag team champions. I got excited about the prospect of a short-term feud with Fraxium, but it's just the NXT champion, whoever was going to win that match, that would be on the show. Of course, we now know that's Oba Femi. Far less interesting unless one of them winds up challenging. They watched Femi's match from the crow's nest, talked some shit to him after the bell. Maybe that's actually what happens. The Heritage Cup was back on the line again. Lexis King defending against Charlie Dempsey. There was a pre-match video package with Dempsey saying King's name being on the cup was a disgrace. King was saved by the bell from a crossface chicken wing. He had no one in his corner, but there were brass knuckles in his spit bucket. King sat down to prevent a sunset flip. He got the first fall during round 2. That completely aired during a commercial. Dempsey landed a double underhook suplex bridge to even it up. King grabbed the knucks, but he dropped them back in the bucket. Dempsey came back with a high-angle German suplex where it looked like King landed fully on his neck, but he was luckily fine. King hit a full tope con hero, but got run into the official in the corner. He used that opportunity to hit a mule kick low blow plus the coronation, and he ultimately retained the cup. Top tier call by Vic Joseph, saying that the groin shot was the regal area of Dempsey. Interesting booking in that King chose not to cheat, then considered getting the knucks when in distress, then ultimately cheated to win, but did so against a heel who was using his faction to try and get the upper hand throughout the entire match. Is he a bad guy, or was that understandable just desserts? The series between these guys, it has hit. Dempsey has brought out the best in King, the wrestler. Dempsey continues himself to shine both in and out of the ring. At the same time, we have gotten this so frequently, it needs to be completely over between them, at least for an extended period of time. Stephanie Vaquer backstage said she's focused on the Women's North American Championship and won't allow Fatal Influence to get in her way or stop her. Then she spoke in Spanish and told Shotzi that she will meet hell and Fallon Henley may run, but she can't hide from the Diabla, the devil. Vaquer is officially going by La Primera, directly meaning the first, probably more accurately to what is trying to be said, the premiere. It's a great nickname. Promo was solid enough. She's still learning English, but I mean, for someone learning a language, she speaks way better than I could any other language. I promise you that. Fraxium, labeled as Fraxium at TNA Genesis over the weekend, was listed as Nathan Frazier and Axiom again on NXT. I swear I am going to pull my hair out over this. They were backstage for an interview. Axiom was hesitant to put themselves over, but Frazier was confident that they would easily take down the Rascals in TNA on Thursday. And yes, since we didn't discuss TNA Genesis, Fraxium was ringside during a tag team title match. I believe it was the Hardys against the Rascals. The Hardys ended up retaining the titles. I didn't see the match, so I can't tell you necessarily how. I think Fraxium may have gotten run into ringside and like caused some chaos perhaps, but they had a scheduled match, you'll remember, against the Rascals during the last NXT TNA crossover. What ended up happening is Trey Miguel got hurt. They had it as Wesley attacking Trey, so that basically canceled the match. So they are actually deserving number one contenders. It's just happening months later than expected. That match did go down Thursday during the live TNA show from Full Sail. And of course, Fraxium retained the title. I believe it was the first time any type of WWE championship has been defended in TNA. I mean, I know that for sure. I don't want to say it's the first time it's ever happened at another company, but it's probably the first time in a long time that it's actually been defended in another company. But that is what happened. We will get into the details of all of it. If there's any additional storyline, we'll get into all of that next week when we do a brief look at TNA. Of course, we're going to talk about New Japan as well. Up came Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura, reminding that they have next. I'll remind, they still haven't even wrestled a match on television, let alone done anything to become number one contenders. Frazier said they haven't beaten anyone to deserve a match.
Thank you.
That's what I'm talking about. And hopefully they win more than one before they get an opportunity. OTM attacked as payback from last week, and the segment just ended. Briggs has come across like a moron in some of these segments of late. And like I said, I'm sure Briggs and Inamura are going to beat OTM, but they cannot be number one contenders going 1-0 as a tag team in NXT. It just wouldn't make any sense. It's going to drive me up the wall. So get them at least like 3 wins, and then let's go from there. Hank and Tank confronted Andre Chase backstage about walking out on them a couple of weeks ago in that match. He told them just break up now because all tag teams end in heartbreak. Lonnie walked out of an office or something and paused overhearing them. Kel Dixon then approached Chase while watching an old Chase U highlight package. He said Chase U was dead, but Dixon pointed out that it didn't have to be, and Andre walked away. That's what we've been saying. The stipulation was not that Chase U had to cease to exist. It was that Chase could not associate with Thea Hale, Ridge Holland, and Riley Osborne anymore. So you have Kel Dixon involved in this. Maybe Lonnie, she's lost in who she is and what she's about. Maybe she loses to Jada and joins Chase U. I mean, kind of interesting if they actually do that. What I'm most curious about is why everyone else has disappeared. Like Thea Hale, Duke Hudson, Riley Osborne. Where are they? Why aren't they wrestling? I understand you ended Chase U, but why is it that the other three people completely went away, especially when they were really well booked, especially Thea, more so than anyone? Like, she doesn't need to be out of this women's division. So it's just a little bit odd what's happening with this, but maybe it will all make sense on the back end. The Men's North American Championship was on the line. Tony D'Angelo defending against Ridge Holland. This was the first match. I was reminded of something I've wanted to say for a while. Unlike many in WWE, Holland actually has a banger entrance theme, and it's kind of a shame it's used on him. Like, no offense to Ridge intended. Sean Spears watched ringside. D'Angelo caught Holland distracted with a spear. Spears then distracted with his dudes attacking the family ringside. With Ridge looking outside the ring again, Izzy Dame booted him in the face, allowing D'Angelo to hit his spinebuster for the retention. The match and the booking of it just left a lot to be desired. 3 different distractions, all in short order. Izzy getting Tony's back, given the way he stood up for her, that made complete sense. They're now even, but her taking out Ridge did not. If anything, that should have been saved for when Spears gets a title match, because that's the guy who had been harassing her backstage. The only explanation I can conjure up is that she's ultimately working with Spears, and this was all a ruse. Beyond that, while D'Angelo does have a great spinebuster, it's such a generic move. The fisherman's neckbreaker, sleep with the fishes, was much more unique. Even if they don't want to use that, just doing a spinebuster, they can't be doing that either. The family fought Brooks Jensen and Nico Vance on the back end of this. This was Vance's TV match debut. The match was chaotic with hardly any tagging, which was ridiculous. Vance shoulder tackled Luca Crucifino into the steel steps and caught Stacks blind with a running lariat, getting the win. D'Angelo was not ringside for reasons. Given Spears was there, it made no sense that Tony D was not, even if he had competed earlier. This is the thought in the moment. He stood tall at that end of that match and was seemingly no worse for the wear, so you would just expect him to be out by the ring. It was easily the worst part of the show, this tag team match. And Jensen, man, I still don't get what they see in him. Lennox threw a bunch of shit backstage, angry at losing to Wesley earlier. He said, quote, "Fuck this place," as Dame and D'Angelo, totally fine, by the way, wearing a suit, were commiserating. The family confronted, asking where he was the whole match. Tony D answered that Izzy was talking his head off. Stacks reiterated that they needed him out there, but D'Angelo said he's the underboss and he shouldn't need a babysitter. So this crystallized what I was just talking about. It was meant to be nonsensical that Tony wasn't out there, and given it was Izzy keeping him backstage, clearly this is a ruse, with her turning on D'Angelo, leading to a Spears title match. Hell, maybe leading to a Spears title win. Probably saying she doesn't need a man to protect her, something like that. I can see that being her angle. I guess that'll be okay. At least she's involved. But the Spears, Jensen, and Vance grouping, the vibes of it just don't really sit well for me, and I'm not completely into it. Entertaining NXT as usual, an easy 2-hour watch. And as you will find out in a moment, the ratings will certainly bear out the fact that people are tuning into this product. So let's go ahead and move over to AEW. And because it was a shorter week, we did have the ability to look at the storyline relevance of the matches that we had across the 4 hours of television. 12 matches this week, 5 of them storyline relevant. And that's actually being a tad generous in at least one case. That's obviously below 50%, but with Rampage gone, the threshold really should be higher than 66%. It should be like 75% these days. Either way, it didn't come close to either the lower of those two marks. Mostly a disappointing week of TV. AEW had made some improvements of late. I thought there were a couple standout segments on Dynamite, but most of Dynamite and the vast majority of Collision were, for me, forgettable television. So let's go ahead and break it all down. On Collision, the Murder Machines squashed Top Flight in 4 minutes. Why? Because I guess AEW might be building like a power tag team division. They need some challengers. Brian Cage is now just trying to look like Wolverine all the time. Remember when we were told Top Flight was something special? Action Andretti distracted after the bell so Leo Rush could blindside the faces, all 75 pounds of them. This should be on Ring of Honor or something like AEW Dark. Why is this happening on cable television? Why is this feud still ongoing? Zero crowd reaction. They also wear perhaps, and I'm talking about Action and Leo here, The dumbest and ugliest jackets in professional wrestling history. Also on Collision, Gates of Agony cut a pre-tape promo basically saying they are better than what they've achieved in AEW, and they're about to begin the run of a lifetime. Yeah, looks like this beefy tag team division might be something actually that's happening. I realize it's kind of weird starting with these segments. It will make sense in a moment. On Collision, Will Ospreay said in a taped interview done after last week's Dynamite that aired Saturday that he and Kenny Omega have been through the ringer together and they may have their differences, but he wanted to call him out this Wednesday and air everything out. That opened this week's Dynamite. My first thought seeing Omega is that he looked old. We all obviously age, but he had been away for a while with this diverticulitis, and it looks like this did understandably wear on him physically. Anyway, Ospreay told Omega he can't begin fighting Jon Moxley and the Death Riders until he takes care of the Don Callis family, which is not something he can do alone. Omega cut him off, still contentious about their past, saying it took him getting sick for fans to even know that Will existed. Kenny said that he didn't accept the apology and would never team with him. Fair play, given their history. Callis interrupted with Omega charging right at him. Konosuke Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher attacked, so Ospreay saved. Murder Machines got involved for a pair of 2-on-1 brawls, yet they all somehow wound up in the same part of the concourse. The AEW merchandise stand looked much improved. That was a positive. The faces finally teamed up to suplex Lance Archer through a table. Omega and Ospreay then each climbed large stationary objects for moonsaults down into the heels. Then they immediately climbed a lighting truss together, with Omega somehow having a microphone in his hand in the middle of the crowd, challenging the Callis family to a match at Grand Slam Australia so they could restore the feeling. He literally said that.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Then production played his music before he even finished speaking. He had to stop them, and he had a really funny line at the end. I received a DM from a listener who wished to remain nameless, saying that she did not understand how some people on social media were calling this AEW's best opening segment ever. Well, I completely agree with you. There were parts of it that were entertaining and exciting, no doubt. That double high-risk spot was amazing, though cameras didn't even capture the visual properly because they weren't positioned well. I also really enjoyed Omega basically calling Ospreay on all of his shit to start the segment. Those were highlights. But the brawl was immensely slow and plodding. Omega and Ospreay overcame a 4-man big boy faction with relative ease, and Omega went from, "You tried to kill me, I'll never forgive you," to, "Actually, I do forgive you and I want to team up with you," with the quickness, all inside of 7 or 8 minutes. And it wasn't like the Callis family did anything that dastardly to them. These guys have been involved in wrestling for decades. They've been attacked, right? They've fought people into the crowd before. It wasn't that unique where like Ospreay saved him from getting hit by a car. And he's like, "Well, since you saved my life, okay, I'll team with you." You know, it felt like AEW skipped like half a dozen steps to get us there when they could have taken us for an actual ride and developed a relationship between Omega and Ospreay, as opposed to, "No, F you, I want nothing to do with you. Okay, let's team up in Grand Slam Australia." Now, granted, some American fans watching may not know their entire backstory, but AEW is built on what guys like them did in their partner promotion, New Japan Pro Wrestling. So why not lean into that shared history and develop a compelling storyline that not only brings these guys together, but enhances their characters and allows fans to buy into them both individually and as a potentially, temporary tag team, but maybe it has larger legs as well. Especially when you have all of this footage at your disposal to tell the story. It's not like their story happened in WWE and they can't show you. They can literally go back into the New Japan archives and show you everything. Plus, they had some stuff in AEW as well. You all know what's going to happen here. This will be a 5-star match in Australia. People will immediately call it the tag team match of the year. It will most likely win those awards no matter how much great tag team wrestling happens for the remainder of 2025. And ultimately, that will mean it's amazing and nothing about it can be criticized. This started hot with Omega's promo and an awesome highlight, the double moonsaults. But overall, this left a lot to be desired as a piece of creative. Just having Kenny back on screen, that is a net positive in itself. This was AEW's best opening segment in a long time. And it was the best segment on Wednesday night show, but it was not its best opening ever. That's just hyperbolic. Production was a serious issue, no matter how you felt about the quality of the segment overall. On Collision, rated FTR Powerhouse Hobbs and the Outrunners beat Death Riders and Learning Tree in 18 minutes. 18 minutes, the longest match on a show that included a Texas death match. Tree cut a promo earlier. I'm laughing that I just called them Tree. Tree cut a promo earlier and took out Hobbs' knee later backstage on the show. Big Bill took Shatter Machine Marina Shafir distracted with the briefcase again as Death Riders briefly put a black stocking over Adam Copeland's head and carried him 3 feet before it fell off. Pac, who was not in the match, brawled with everyone into the crowd. The referee looked right at it and didn't call a disqualification. Hobbs limped to the ring for the hot tag, and my recording cut off. I presume Hobbs got the fall at the end. The 12-man match was panned when it was initially announced. I figured, okay, yeah, deserved because it's shitty booking, but AEW can usually put on like an actually great 10-12-man match with just chaos everywhere, even when expectations are low. Unfortunately, the match was terribly paced. It was badly booked. Hobbs' knee has now been taken out twice. Extremely rough main event. On Dynamite, Copeland fought Pac. John Moxley cut a backstage promo about Cope, comparing his neck hanging on by a thread to that of Bryan Danielson and Darby Allin's overall death wish. This week, with Pac in attendance, Claudio Castagnoli was not there. Wheeler Yuta also looked ridiculous. This main evented with Copeland hitting 2 spears and an airplane spin TKO to get the win. Strange to finish the match that way, but I kind of liked that it wasn't with his regular move. Pac taking that much like punishment overall was also positive in that he looked strong in the loss, though that may not actually mean anything given he's so sparsely booked in the first place and he never wins shit. So like, why even bother protecting him at this point? As per usual, AEW could not end Dynamite or a Death Riders adjacent segment on a high note. The crowd popped quite nicely for Copeland's win, and it was right with him celebrating. It was very quiet for the vast majority of the match, but it did like the finish. And then Shafir and Mox appeared on screen with Claudio and Wheeler having tied up FTR while delivering a concerto to the Rock and Roll Express, who were back at Dynamite without us being informed at any point over the 2-hour show that they were there. Commentary snuck in that they were doing some marketing for the company. We never even saw their faces, just their bald heads. You would think that like you'd get a pan shot backstage. Oh my God, look, Rock and Roll Express is there. That's weird that they're there 2 weeks in a row. Hey guys, you saw the Rock and Roll Express? Yeah, they're doing some marketing for AEW. Great to have them visiting tonight's show. Fast forward an hour, they're laid out with a concerto. Like, it is not hard to book and do creative in such a way where the viewer is taken for a little bit of a ride over the course of a program. Instead, oh yeah, look, there's the Rock and Roll Express again, taking a concerto. By the way, isn't like Ricky Morton one of Mox's favorite wrestlers and he just wants to kill these guys now? Like, it was utterly ridiculous. Death Riders surrounded the ring Shield style, given Cope's friends were all dead. Shafir also got involved. Jay White was the answer to his prayers. Of course, none of the women were interested in Shafir. White nearly took out all 4 guys on his own, except Yuta stopped a Blade Runner with Mox stemming the save. Mox ended it with the Bulldog choke once again on Copeland. Relative silence from the crowd. Could have started and ended the show hot. Instead, started hot, ended with another thud. Absolutely formulaic and lifeless. Arguably the worst ongoing story right now in major professional wrestling, at least in WWE and AEW. And it's also one of the worst factions in wrestling right now. There is 0 character development for the members of this stable. Yeah, they all treat Yuta like shit, but that's really it. Shafir is the literal definition of silent badass, except there are no women she even gets to flex against. Pac is never around. When he is, he's briefly violent and then just loses a match. Claudio is kind of a gatekeeper, but his relationship with Mox never changes. They don't have discussions as a group. We don't see any interplay between the characters. They don't change the way they think or act or talk. There are no interesting dynamic shifts from one week to the next. Compare this to Bloodline or Judgment Day. You can compare it to Damage Control back in the day. those groups shifted and changed. They had thoughts and feelings and things happened. Death Riders is literally the same thing over and over. Mox cuts a word salad promo. Everyone looks at the camera menacingly. They create a numbers advantage and stand tall, and they often do that after losing a match, but occasionally they win. It's literally missionary position.
It's the same thing over and over and over. It's like missionary position every single night.
But you know what? It might be boring, but at least you feel something in missionary position. It's not even that. This is abstinence. It's unnecessarily restrictive and painful. Obviously, I'm just having fun when I say that. Nothing wrong with being abstinent if that is your decision. By the way, Mox basically has 3 immediate title challengers right now. They're people who are gunning after his championship. Here are their names: Adam Copeland, Jeff Jarrett, and Christian Cage. Here are their ages: 51, 57, 51. Spoiler alert, the tag team champions are each about 49. The Ring of Honor champion is 54. What happened to AEW being built around youth and pillars and the next generation and non-WWE talent? That shit is out the window. Speaking of Jericho, on Dynamite, he called out Big Bill during his New York Minute segment for not using the knowledge that he's bestowing for Bill to better himself. So Bill called out Hobbs for a match Saturday. Sure, Hobbs later said he'd meet Bill in the parking lot. I bet you they do a knee injury angle, and then Hobbs ultimately wins. Let's just take a guess. On Collision, Hangman Page beat Christopher Daniels in a Texas death match that served as CD's swan song in the ring. This unbelievably opened the show. Daniels bladed 5 minutes into the match, but at least it was stipulation adjacent blood. He took a barbed wire lariat, powerbomb into 2 chairs, and a header into another before Page double stomped him off the apron through a table that collapsed and did not break. CD answered with an avalanche Uranagi through a barbed wire table that actually broke. He also countered a barbed wire buckshot lariat into a flatliner and a Koji clutch, adding Angel's Wings. Best moonsault ever, and a second with a table piece. Hangman sold for 9 seconds, then jumped right back to his feet, hitting a tombstone pile driver into a steel chair. The referee didn't even count. Page added Deadeye into the chair and buckshot to the back of the head before crouching over Daniels, watching the 10 count. And then after the bell, after he already won the match, Page hit Angel's Wings himself. This is a great match with a well-told story and a nice way to end Daniels' in-ring career. It should have main evented the show or been put in a spot where there was more significant build to it during the episode. This really should have been on Dynamite. If it's going to be an opening match, it should have opened to Dynamite. It definitely helped Page's character, particularly when he came back to sadistically add the exclamation point at the end. Hangman does, as a heel, feel a bit try-hard just with this gimmick, but it ultimately accomplished its goal. Commentary called this AEW's 8th Texas death match, 8 in 5 years. The vast majority of them not in Texas. That's the definition of an overused gimmick. And we already talked about last week how the matches don't happen in, Texas, and how Hangman's from Virginia, but he's a cowboy, so everything's Texas. It's all convoluted. On Dynamite, Karen backstage told Jeff Jarrett she didn't like him getting in the mud with MJF last week. Jarrett cut a promo recalling that Jerry Lawler once told him to never get in the gutter with opponents. He said he would settle his beef with MJF Southern style. So I was like, fried with a pickle? Like, what's Southern style? Without lights, he said he'd take him out to the woodshed. Then he called out Mox, which led to Claudio attacking, saying he would have to go through him to get to Mox. 0 pop. So Claudio couldn't be in that backstage segment because he attacked Jeff 20 minutes later after an unplanned call-out. Jarrett suggested Castagnoli basically served as an eliminator match, and he agreed. He said, hey, fight me, and if you beat me, you can get a title shot. Talk about like preemptive pessimism. Even if Jarrett catches him with like a small package or something, beating Claudio would be absolutely ridiculous. Also on Dynamite, MJF in a separate in-ring promo segment, he said Jeff needed to apologize to him and the fans for actually thinking he can win the AEW title. MJF revealed that his entire ploy was to help Jarrett and then beat him as an easier opponent. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. We all knew that. He also said no one loves Jarrett, including the fans, who immediately chanted Double J, which isn't what you would chant if you loved him. right? Aren't you mocking him for Double J? So that was a little weird. Minimal reaction from the crowd to a guy who just last year was arguably the most over wrestler in this entire company. The drop-off for MJF has been immense, and it really feels like Max is straight up losing his fastball, like Wild Thing Rick Vaughn style. Hangman interrupted. He demanded Max leave the ring because he had a scheduled match with a jobber who was just standing ringside. He beat that dude in 18 seconds. In kayfabe, why would Hangman have been booked for a squash match? Paige hit Angel's Wings after the bell on this poor guy. That brought out CD and a neck brace. Hangman got in his face. Daniel said he didn't want heat with him. He was only trying to help him from the beginning, but he let his ego get the best of him. CD said the match caused him to medically retire. So Paige wins and goodbye. Are you happy that you won? Is that what you wanted? Congratulations. Where's he going? The dude still works backstage. We all know he works backstage. Why are you saying goodbye? This would have been more effective had AEW not leaked the fact that Daniels was retiring prior to the first part of this happening. They leaked that because they wanted people to watch Collision knowing it would be his last match. But that ruins the storyline aspect of saying, well, you hurt my neck so bad, putting me into a chair all those extra times that it caused me to medically retire. By the way, Daniels can be fine with losing that match and Hangman winning. The issue was that he did Angel's Wings to him after the bell. So he went beyond that. Why would you not be pissed at someone doing that to you? And that's not him beating him in the match. That's him literally ending his career after the fact, right? The promo was largely met with crickets, but I want to give credit to Hangman because his facial expressions and nonverbal acting could really sell that what CD said and the way he kind of shrugged everything off actually affected Paige. Like Hangman, the character, was looking at it as, man, I put all that effort into it. I was so angry. I beat him. I attacked him. I injured him after the fact. And what did it get me? I ended an old man's career and I'm no better off for it. It might actually be the first glimpse into a return to babyface Paige. If they could execute a double turn with a certain someone who never should have been a face in the first place, that would be even better. I doubt that is happening. As far as next week goes, it sure feels like MJF might interfere, leading to Jarrett's win over Claudio, which progresses their storyline, gets him a title match. Whether Castagnoli would want retribution after that would remain to be seen. It's just crazy that Jarrett is getting this much time on a weekly basis, even if he's not, like, in reality, a contender for the title. At least let's hope he's not. The Hangman MJF face-to-face, that was by far the most interesting part out of all of this. A feud between them would really help with the Hangman face turn. It might even force MJF to find his form on the mic again. That would be great. On Dynamite, Swerve Strickland beat AR Fox in 9 minutes. Why? No reason whatsoever. Ricochet tried to stab him with scissors late, so Prince Nana chased him off with a steel pipe. Ricochet cut a live promo on the big screen saying he had a lot to get off his chest next week. Why not get it off your chest now? The camera then panned back to reveal Rick had Nana pinned against a road case with a scissor blade near his neck. So now we're threatening to slit throats in AEW because people threw toilet paper at you. Like, you're actually going to murder this poor guy?
No.
Swerve later snapped during a promo, basically saying he would destroy him in 2 weeks or maybe even next week. Fantastic. On Dynamite, the tag team championships were on the line. Private Party against Hurt Syndicate. MVP declared his guys the number one contenders on Collision in a tape promo from last week's Dynamite. And then they got their title match right away on this week's Dynamite. Apparently MVP is a booker now. Syndicate won the titles in 9 minutes. They just flattened and destroyed them. This was an 84-day transitional reign that was somehow the worst AEW tag team title reign ever. And yes, that includes Sting and Darby Allin holding the straps for 25 days before vacating them. At least they had one great match. This title change absolutely needed to happen. The division has been in a death spiral, and this is at least giving it life. Syndicate should go on a dominant run to reestablish the straps. And as we mentioned, there seems to be a growing list of like beefy contenders for them. The question's going to be who eventually emerges to take the straps. But hopefully that's a long way off. It was a forgettable match, but it was easily the right and immediately necessary move to basically save a division that was completely dead in 2024. On Collision, Julia Hart beat Harley Cameron in 7 minutes. Harley hit Eat Defeat, which Julia sold by kidding. She didn't sell it at all. Heartless ended it. Unfortunately, it was the worst match on the entire show. I think it may have been the worst match of the week. On Collision, Toni Storm did an in-ring interview as a rookie, saying Mariah May is the best in the world, and she's excited to finally meet her face-to-face for the first time next week. Tony Schiavone tried to play it as if he was going to say something to her, but he just didn't. I enjoy what Storm is doing. It still does not track that she returned to confront May after a title retention, only to move into a character where she believes she has no history with anyone in the company. May got a video package that had terrible audio balance. You could barely hear her. Maybe she sent it in from her phone or something. The content seemed good. It was Mariah talking her normal shit, saying she can't wait to meet Tony for the first time. Harley then interrupted a backstage interview where she and Tony did a lot of Australian slang talking. The idea being that Cameron's going to get a match against someone at Grand Slam. The big women's title match is getting build time on Collision, not Dynamite, by the way. So it kind of tells you where they position that within what's important for the company. On Dynamite, Mercedes Moné walked backstage with her 4 straps, calling herself a global champion who will wrestle in Australia and is excited to see who steps up. Mind you, there's no number 1 contendership. There's no obvious immediate challenger, but she already knows she's going to defend the title on the show, and she's just waiting to find out who that's going to be. This is also the first time that we've seen her live on TV in weeks. Harley came up again, singing a comedy song on her guitar, saying she wants to ride the Monet train. Thankfully, Mercedes pointed out, Harley has never won a match and didn't deserve a title shot. The fact that I love Harley, but was legit concerned AEW would book her in that match anyway, just proves how terribly the women's division is put together from a logistical standpoint. Like I said, though, thankfully that was not the case. Instead, we just got to enjoy Cameron's talent a little bit, and it was a really fun backstage segment with Mercedes doing a great job, playing along, bopping along to the song, and then being like, what are you kidding me? You're not getting a title shot. The song was actually catchy as well. Harley may well be the most talented person in wrestling when it comes to overall skill set. There's a lot of wrestlers who can do a lot of other things. She can act, she can be serious, she can be funny, she can sing, she can do ventriloquism. I mean, it is absolutely wild, the skill set on this woman. I do feel, and this is I'm not saying I'm her biggest fan, but I'm certainly a huge supporter of Harley's. It does feel like they are just ramming her down our throats. She is involved, I don't want to say in every women's segment, but look what we just talked about. I mean, she's challenged for every title or fought every champion, with the exception, I guess, of Mercedes of late. She's fought every recent contender, right? She did Thunder Rosa, and I want to say Jamie Hayter and Mariah May, and maybe Toni Storm she's going to fight at some point. She's involved in every championship segment, now with Mercedes here, with Mariah previously. And it's Harley's great, but you have a full women's division, and Harley does not need to be the one wrestling every single week. She should be on TV every single week. But when you have 2 women's matches across 4 hours of television, you got to actually put on quality matches. And while I like Harley, and I think she's totally fine in the ring, and I think she's actually getting better, you have a much more talented division than her from bell to bell. And you got to start using them rather than just leaning on Harley for people to like the women's division, is pretty much what I'm trying to say. On Dynamite, Hayter beat Hart in under 10 minutes. This was a rematch 3 weeks after their first fight. But unless my memory is failing me, I don't believe there was any additional storyline build over this time. This one was much better than the first. Dynamite was not a great show of in-ring wrestling, which was a rarity. This might have been the best match. It's at least an argument. Jamie put over Julia after the bell, calling her a tough bitch, no matter who is behind her. She also offered a rubber match for whenever she wants. So this is now 3 straight weeks, or 3 of the last 5 shows, whatever you want to call it, where House of Black members have been given a rah-rah speech by babyfaces on TV just because Malachi Black is leaving the company off of TV, despite not being written out on TV. It's hysterical. It is so transparent. What are any of these even accomplishing? Fans know all 3 of them rock. They cheer for Brody King, they cheer for Julia Hart, and they cheer for Buddy Matthews. I don't need Jamie Hayter and Adam Copeland and Will Ospreay telling me that they're good. It's all been immensely forced and, like I said, transparent. As luck would have it, about 5 minutes later on Dynamite, despite the vague words in Hater's promo, AEW ran a video package for Julia Brody King and Buddy Matthews. Brody was walking a dog in the package, so I guess their dark arts somehow transformed Malachi into a hound. He went from leader to mascot. They said they've had a voice guiding them for years, but it's now gone silent, and they're done living in the shadows. No leaders, just violence, and when they bark together. Unfortunately, this segment ended with only Brody King barking. So whoever produced this promo should have had all three of them bark, given the line he uttered. When we bark together. And only one guy does it. Like, come on. So they're going to be called Cerberus or Hounds of Hades or Hounds of Hell or something like that. The three-headed dog in Greek mythology. Good enough concept for a trio. Feels a bit contrived overall, but I'm sure fans will like it, and I like all three of them, so I'm happy to see them continuing to be on television. On Collision, the Continental Championship was on the line. Kazuchika Okada beat Tomohiro Ishii in 8 minutes to retain his title. While they obviously have history from Japan, this just happened for no reason whatsoever. There wasn't even a post-match story to justify it being on the show. You know, AEW will do a match and then like the next challenger will come out. Nothing happened. It was a waste of time. Ishii entered this match 0-11 in AEW singles. He's now 0-12. Half of those matches, 6 of them, have been title matches or title eliminator matches. He's had 5 title opportunities and 1 title eliminator. Half of his AEW singles matches, yet all of them have been losses. That is what trash booking looks like. Here's some more. On Collision, Undisputed Kingdom beat Shane Taylor Promotions in 7 minutes. I never knew the group further expanded. The match happened for no reason. Kingdom again did not appear with the Undisputed Era guys. Taylor attacked all 3 of them from behind after the bell, and then Matt Menard on commentary like randomly took exception to him. He stood up. So Daniel Garcia ran down for a 4-on-1 attack, which is what it took to subdue Taylor, who himself is 0-9 all time on AEW television in singles. The idea was that the Undisputed guys saw the TNT title and now they all want it.
What is going on?
This was such a shitty bit of creative, literally every part of it. Random match, Taylor besting 3 more talented wrestlers with ease, 2 of them, by the way, who have been champions in AEW. Menard randomly getting involved. Garcia randomly attacking when no one was at risk from Taylor. I mean, he took them all out, but he was just standing there. He wasn't continuing to attack them. This was really bad. It actually continued backstage with Cole telling Garcia it's a shame they don't have a third because they want to be the best trio in AEW. We learned that Angelo Parker is going to come back for a trios match. Now, I'm definitely down for Undisputed to go after the trios titles since they're literally not even on television right now. Death Riders has them. They don't defend them. They don't carry them in suitcases. They just don't exist. So I'm cool with Undisputed going after them. But why do they want to fight baby faces who just saved them? One of whom is the TNT champion, and they all looked at the TNT title. I can't answer this for you. On Collision, Max Caster with a fake Louis Vuitton bag called Anthony Bowens out to the ring. Caster said there's a misunderstanding between them. They're great partners and friends, but Bowens won't admit he's the best wrestler alive. Bowens said he's tried to protect him for 5 years. He's actually an arrogant, cocky, selfish, edgelord piece of shit. Quick but not sustained pop for that. Caster showed off a trademark application for his nickname. Bowens went nuts calling himself a 5-tool player and the pride of AEW. Now that is a great moniker. Pride of AEW for Anthony Bowens. I love that. Billy Gunn entered trying to get them on the same side. Caster just shit on him for latching on to them, saying each of his teams have broken up in his career. Caster said Bowens had to choose between them. The guy who just called him a selfish piece of shit had to choose between them. Bowens gave him the finger and sided with Gunn. So Caster ended the Acclaimed himself, promising to prove he's the best wrestler alive. This thing could have been an email. This bag that Caster was carrying around played no role whatsoever. I guess the trademark contract was in there. The trademark certificate was in there, and he took it out of it. But like, it seemed like there was going to be a weapon, or he was going to use it and hit Bowens with it or something. He kept picking it up and moving it around. it was nonsensical. So that played no role. The crowd shifted between caring and not caring as the segment went on. None of them gave enough of a shit about Caster to actually boo him. Bowens getting cheered and showing some gumption, that was positive. I frankly could not have cared any less as a viewer. And if Caster winds up joining Hurt Syndicate, which it seemed like he was going to because it started the split, I can't see that as a positive. I'm not sure how this character is supposed to get over as a heel. I could see Bowens getting over as a face, but I just don't know how long his runway is as a singles performer in AEW when there's so many more. Not that he's not talented. I really like him in the ring, but there's so many other wrestlers that like are going to be in all these title pictures. I just don't really know where Bowens fits in that type of role. And lastly, on Collision, Dustin Rhodes beat a jobber in 2 minutes. I'm glad the 4 people who gave a shit about this, probably the jobber's family, got to see it on cable television because I'm not sure who this match was for other than them. So that wraps up AEW this week. As I said, Collision for me was immensely frustrating. There were some high spots on Dynamite, no question about it. And the Hurt Syndicate title change was super important to kind of save that division. But all in all, did I find it to be a banner week for the company? No, believe both of the last 2 weeks, at least last week, were better. It seemed like they were gaining some momentum, moving in a positive direction. I love Kenny Omega being back and teaming him with Will Ospreay. It's getting the crowd crazy invested in both of them, but they're just invested in them wrestling. Like I said earlier, they had an opportunity to really tell a story with these guys, and they kind of threw it all away on Wednesday night just to make the match quickly rather than build it over the next couple of weeks. But the thing is, they need to sell tickets for this show. We had an AEW fan who I guess is a member of something called AEW Insider. He's a listener, Nims Azor at Doc Nims. He tweeted us right as we were taping the show that they're doing a 2-for-1 ticket offer for Grand Slam in Australia in certain parts of the Brisbane Entertainment Center. So, clearly that show, even though it moved to an arena and may or may not have been downgraded, not selling that well if they're doing a 2-for-1 type of deal, at least in certain sections. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough sledding for AEW right now. And that's not even talking about attendance and some of the other things that are happening. Let's go ahead and wrap up this show with a quick look at ratings for NXT and AEW Dynamite. We, of course, don't even bother with Collision. The numbers for NXT remain impressive. The show delivered 779,000 viewers in a 0.17 demo last week, only to rise to a whopping 812,000 viewers and a 0.22 demo this week. Not counting the Rock episode, ratings for that were all over the place due to the LA fires. It got higher ratings in those areas because everyone was tuned in for fire coverage. But because of that, NXT didn't actually air in those markets. So it's impossible to know what the real rating on that show would have been. So because of that, this was the third highest viewership and third highest demo on the CW, and the highest since the opening 2 weeks. NXT on a crazy roll right now, and they are not even really using main roster talent. Yes, Bayley was on the show, and A-Town Down Under was a surprise on the program, but that's not Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins coming down, is what I'm trying to say. AEW Dynamite was celebrated last week for doing 679,000 viewers with a 0.18 demo. I was flummoxed as to why. Yes, it was the highest viewership since October 2nd, and that is notable, but it was within the normal and somewhat expected range. Dynamite ticked down to 655 this week with a 0.19 demo. Again, right within the expected range. The shows don't compete head-to-head. They face different competition on different nights. I always have to make that caveat clear. However, NXT did have more viewers both weeks, and they delivered a notably higher demo this week with more than 150,000 additional watchers. As I've mentioned since the day that NXT on CW contract was reported, WWE drastically undervalued this property, and CW got an absolute steal. Realize that rating this week, it's with Bayley. Again, not with Becky, not with some of these other talents that have come down there. This was not a situation where they were trying to pop a number, right? I know WWE wanted to be on network television, and I presume that's the reason they took somewhat of a lesser contract to put this show on the CW. But man, talk about leaving money on the table. we know what AEW is getting paid. And yes, it's all kind of factored in together. It's, streaming rights for the shows. It's Dynamite and Collision. It's pay-per-views on Max and some catalog on Max as well. So it's really impossible to carve out what percentage is specifically for Dynamite. But even if you were just kind of generous, it really feels like NXT is an absolute steal for CW. And I said it at the time that the deal was signed with AEW. It did feel to me like Warner Brothers Discovery severely overpaid for that package. But as I've always said, you are worth what someone will pay you. And that's what Warner deemed as, being valuable when it came to AEW. It deemed them to be a valuable property for their service. That's what they paid. Again, when it comes to the CW and WWE, I presume it was a situation where both sides wanted to make it happen. And the CW was like, this is the max we can go. And WWE said, well, we want to be on network TV. So, okay, we'll take it. Maybe we could have gotten 35 somewhere else, but we want to be on network. We want to be on broadcast over the air. So we'll do it. But man, I mean, they're not a company that usually leaves money on the table. They must believe that the calculus of potentially being exposed to those households that don't have cable and don't have Netflix is worth more than, $10 or $15 million a year. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not, but I guess given how much money they make, they can probably take that risk. So look, that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Obviously, we covered everything that happened in NXT and AEW. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to do an expanded Thursday show next week. We will again talk NXT and AEW. I'm also going to talk a little bit about TNA Genesis and what happened on this live show. I know it'll be a week, fully delayed kind of coming into it, but it'll still be somewhat topical. Speaking of delayed, we'll do brief analysis of the two major New Japan events at the start of January, mostly how those factor into what's happening in AEW right now. All of that coming up on Thursday. Between now and then, Saturday, we will have, yes, a WWE Saturday Night's Main Event instant analysis show for you. And then on Tuesday, we will be back not only with a WWE show, but the 2025 WWE Royal Rumble Ultimate Preview. Make sure you subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts, including, of course, YouTube, where you can find us at Getting Overcast. Please remember, especially since I did not mention it off the top today,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I sure hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments for the show, and I will go through all of them next week and do my best to include many of them on our shows. Please also remember, here at Getting Over,
It's all about Defy.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the program. Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. As mentioned, we will be back on Saturday with your WWE Saturday Night's Main Event instant analysis. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.